You ever hear the saying, "Don't poke the bear"? Well, in our neighborhood, the bear wore a scarf and a carrot nose, and the one doing the poking. She thought she was queen of a kingdom that didn't exist. See, winter in Pine Haven used to mean cocoa. Kids sledding down hills and families coming together under string lights and snowy skies. But this year the snow fell on a battlefield. It all started with a snowman. Not just any snowman, Gideon, and the woman who destroyed him. She didn't know that beneath the frost and fluff, she was picking a fight with the wrong neighbor. What followed was a war of letters, fake fines, and one very bad decision involving an SUV. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about a community that said enough. The town of Pine Haven didn't make headlines. It wasn't the kind of place you read about in magazines or saw in documentaries. It was just quiet. It was the kind of town where people nodded to each other at gas stations, where mailboxes leaned a little from snowplow nicks, and where Christmas lights were left up until February. Without judgment, Ethan Keller had lived on Willow Bend Lane for 16 years, a craftsman by trade, a father by miracle, and a widower by tragedy. He didn't ask much of the world. He kept his house in good shape, paid his taxes, and every December, without fail, he built a snowman. Not a typical three-ball, Frosty. No, Ethan's snowmen were works of art. One year, it was a snow dragon, wings and all. Another year, a life-size snow train complete with a carved coal car. He wasn't trying to show off. It was tradition. A tradition he and his late wife Megan had started when they first moved into the house. A tradition he now carried on for their daughter Sadie. Sadie was 8 now, curious, whip-smart, and heartbreakingly insightful for a child her age. She had her mother's eyes and her father's patience. Every year, she helped Ethan roll the base pat. The snow pressed the buttons into the smile. Every year, she whispered something into the snowman's ear. When they were done, a private little wish. This year, Ethan made something special. A snow sentinel, towering arms outstretched, like it was guarding the whole front yard. Sadie named him Gideon. She said he looked like he could protect them, and maybe that's what Ethan needed most. That night, they drank hot cocoa on the porch and watched the snow fall quietly around Gideon. For a few hours, everything felt right in the world, until Penelope Ward moved in. Penelope was a polished woman in her mid-50s, with sharp cheekbones and sharper opinions. She arrived in Pine Haven like a snowplow without brakes, all power suits and printed bylaws. Within a week, she had created something called the Pine Haven Preservation Committee, PPC. She claimed it wasn't an HOA, just a community enhancement initiative. But anyone with ears could hear the threats tucked beneath her smile. Ethan got his first letter on a windy Tuesday morning, white envelope. No stamp slipped directly into his mailbox, which was, by the way, regulation height, as confirmed by Ethan himself when he installed it. Dear resident, as part of our seasonal audit, your yard has been flagged for non-compliance regarding decorative obstructions. Please remove the large snow figure within 48 hours. It violates the PPC's aesthetic continuity guidelines. Sincerely, Penelope Ward, Interim Chairwoman, Pine Haven Preservation Committee. Ethan read the letter once, then again slower. He chuckled. A snowman, a violation. He looked at Sadie, twirling in the snow next to Gideon. Her mittens mismatched her laugh, echoing through the air. He folded the letter in half and tossed it in the recycling bin. That night, Sadie tucked her plush fox under her arm and asked, "Dad, why don't people like snowmen?" Ethan crouched beside her. Some people don't like what they can't control. She looked puzzled. But Gideon doesn't hurt anyone. I know, sweetheart, and we're not taking him down. But Penelope wasn't the kind of person who took no kindly, even when it was never spoken aloud. 2 nights later, Ethan found Gideon destroyed, not melted, not wind-toppled, destroyed. Like someone had taken a bat to it. He checked the cameras he'd installed after a raccoon got into the trash bins last spring. The footage was crystal clear. At 11:38 p.m., Penelope Ward, wrapped in a fur-lined coat, marched onto his lawn with a broom handle. She swung it once, twice, then again. The snowman's head snapped off. She didn't stop. She kicked the base until it collapsed, then calmly brushed her gloves off like she'd just taken out the trash. Ethan didn't move for a long time. He just stared at the screen. Then he played it again. And again, Sadie found him in the morning, staring out at the decapitated ruins of their creation. "Gideon," she whispered. "I'll rebuild him," Ethan said softly. "Better this time." Snow continued to fall in Pine Haven, blanketing the streets in silence. But the calm was a lie. Beneath that frosty surface, tension simmered. A neighborly stalemate turning into a full-blown Cold War. Ethan didn't rebuild Gideon the way he had before. This time, he meant business. Underneath the snowy skin of the new Snowman, now even taller with sculpted shoulders and a stoic face, Ethan packed a concrete-filled plastic barrel. Not to hurt anyone, of course, just to ensure that no amount of midnight broom swinging would bring him down again. The neighbors noticed. They didn't say anything outright, not yet. But nods turned to thumbs up, smiles turned to grins. Pine Haven might have been polite, but even politeness had its breaking point. And Penelope had been pushing for far too long. She struck again anyway, this time with a rake and a printed folder. But when she rammed the handle into the new Snowman, it didn't budge. The rake bounced back with a crack, nearly flipping from her hands. Penelope stumbled back, confused and fuming. She left a note instead. "You have 24 hours to comply with PPC regulations. Repeated non-compliance may result in community action." Ethan laughed when he read it. Then he called his lawyer. See, what Penelope didn't know, or worse, didn't care about, was that the Pine Haven Preservation Committee had never been formally registered. It had no charter, no legal standing, no authority. Ethan's lawyer helped him draft a certified cease and desist letter. Simple, legal, and sharp enough to sting. He dropped it into Penelope's mailbox himself, right under the "No Unsightly Decorations" sign she'd nailed to her porch. The next morning, Penelope called a community meeting. No one showed, except Ethan. He stood quietly in the back of the clubhouse room, sipping black coffee from a thermos. Penelope, surrounded by empty folding chairs, tried to hold her composure as she addressed exactly one audience member. "Community unity is at risk," she declared dramatically. "We must restore order." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I think most folks are doing just fine." Her jaw tensed. "You've encouraged chaos." He smiled politely. "I encouraged snowmen." Back at home, Sadie was waiting with her snow boots on. "Did you win?" He crouched and tied her laces. "Not yet, kiddo. But I think the tide's turning." And it was. Quietly. But surely the neighborhood was shifting. It started with Mr. Holtz down the street, putting up a 12-foot inflatable Santa, something Penelope had written him up for the year before. Then the Millers lit their house in full rainbow icicles, defying her white light-only bulletin. Even Mrs. Navarro, who had once been Penelope's strongest supporter, returned the PPC welcome packet with a sticky note that read, "I didn't move here for dictatorship." But Penelope didn't back down. Instead, she doubled down. She began sending out invoices, fake fines labeled community beautification violations. Ethan got one for excessive yard disruption, aka the Snowman. Mr. Holtz got one for his Santa. Even the kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalks were suddenly visual obstructions. The final straw came when Sadie ran into the house crying one afternoon, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. "She told me my snow drawings were ugly," she sobbed. "She said I was degrading neighborhood standards." Ethan didn't hesitate. He walked right to his garage, grabbed his file of Penelope's letters, printed out copies of her fake fines, and drove them all straight to the Pine Haven town clerk. What Penelope didn't know was that the town had recently passed a community integrity ordinance aimed at preventing unregistered groups from acting like governing bodies. What she also didn't know, the town clerk was Ethan's cousin. Within 48 hours, Penelope Ward received her own letter. This one real. "You are hereby ordered to cease any and all activity under the name of the Pine Haven Preservation Committee. Further actions may result in criminal penalties." She lost it. At 2 a.m. that night, Penelope drove her Lexus across Ethan's yard, Headlights off, intention burning, and then crunch right into Gideon, Tuzo. The Snowman didn't move. Her bumper, however, folded like foil. Security footage caught everything. And when Officer Breen, the local beat cop, knocked on her door the next morning, she was still in her slippers, face blotchy, hands trembling. The neighborhood watched from behind curtains. Nobody said a word. Nobody needed to. I used to think the best revenge was loud, dramatic, something that made headlines or racked up likes online. But watching Karen crumble, not through yelling or violence, but under the weight of her own lies, that was better than I ever imagined. The morning after her SUV met its snowy demise, the neighborhood woke up to a letter again. But this time, not from Karen. This one came directly from the city attorney's office, taped cleanly to everyone's door in bold letters. It read, "Notice of Active Fraud Investigation." It detailed a formal probe into Karen's fake HOA activities, the illegal collection of dues, forged documents, false citations. What shocked most of the neighbors was the amount: over $48,000 collected from unsuspecting homeowners, some of whom didn't even speak English fluently and thought they were following legal requirements. People were angry, but not just that. They were betrayed. And when the investigator showed up that afternoon in a navy blue blazer with a clipboard and a quiet determination, Karen finally realized she was no longer feared. She was finished. I was sipping my coffee on the porch like usual when they knocked on her door. She answered, wearing the same pink bathrobe she'd marched across lawns in back. When she still thought she ran the world, the investigator calmly handed her a thick envelope. "Ms. Freeman," she said, "you are being formally charged with impersonating a governing body, mail fraud, unlawful solicitation of funds, and obstruction of municipal operations." Karen didn't speak. Her hands trembled, her eyes darting, searching the street for support. But no one came. Even Mike, her old next-door ally, who once believed her HOA was real, stood on his porch, arms folded, stone-faced. She turned to me, and for a moment I saw something in her face that stopped me cold. Not hatred, not defiance. Fear. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," she whispered. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? She built her kingdom on threats and forged paperwork. Now the paper trail was burying her. Over the next few days, the house she once ruled from became a crime scene of silence. Officials came and went. Boxes were carried out, bank statements, HOA violation logs, folders, labeled with names of neighbors she'd extorted. And then came the final blow. The city issued a civil restitution order. Karen was ordered to repay every cent she fraudulently collected, plus fines. Her assets were frozen. Her fake HOA office fund, which was just a second checking account under her name, was seized. A for sale sign went up in her yard. But this wasn't a moving notice. It was an eviction in motion, the final time. I saw her was on a Wednesday morning. She didn't wave. She didn't scream. She just stared at the snowman standing proud in my yard. It wasn't even the same one she'd tried to destroy. That one had melted weeks ago. This one was new, bigger, sturdier. The neighbors had helped build it. It wasn't mine anymore. It was ours. She got in a rusted rental car and drove off without a word. No one said goodbye. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, the community held a neighborhood meeting. Not to form an HOA, but to celebrate its demise. We created a community agreement. No governing board, no fake rules, just neighbors looking out for each other. Mike donated his grill. Susan brought cookies. The kids built a Karen-proof snowman together, complete with a little metal badge and a nameplate that read HOA certified. We laughed, we healed, and most importantly, we remembered. Not just the chaos, but the lesson: tyranny only thrives when good people stay quiet. And sometimes it takes a snowman built of concrete and spite to melt the frost of fear someone else tries to cast over your life.